Gabriel has been very good so far. And this one is picked off and going back the other way. Now it's a foot race, and that is that. Welcome to the Philadelphia Eagles, Andrew Makuba. A pick six the other way on the first play of the second quarter. Get you in the running. Today's Eagles player stats presented by Jefferson Health. Jefferson Health, official hospital of the Philadelphia Eagles. And Gabriel, who had been on the mark.
The fallout from this deal was immediate, and the financial consequences hit Dillon Gabriel like a brick wall. This wasn't just a matter of pride or losing a spotlight. This was millions of dollars evaporating overnight. That rumored $1.2 million Reebok contract Gabriel's camp was chasing wasn't just going to line his pockets. It would have changed the trajectory of his career. That money would have funded off-season training, media exposure, and opened doors to even more endorsements with other lifestyle brands. Think about it. Once Reebok stamps you as their guy, other companies start paying attention. Energy drinks, fashion collabs, even local car dealerships start wanting a piece of the action. Gabriel lost all of that when Shedeur swooped in. On the flip side, Shedeur Sanders didn't just collect a paycheck, he created a chain reaction. Within days of his Reebok announcement, social media showed spikes in engagement around Reebok's brand name. Online searches for Reebok Sanders skyrocketed. Early merch drops tied to him sold out almost instantly. Sneaker resale markets showed scalpers flipping his branded gear at double or triple the price. And investors took notice. Reebok's parent company saw a bump in stock value as analysts started talking about a Reebok revival narrative. In pure dollars, Shedeur wasn't just an expense. He was a revenue generator. And that's the coldest part of this entire story. To the brand, Dillon Gabriel was replaceable. A solid quarterback, sure. A hardworking, respectable athlete, no doubt. But in their eyes, he was never going to move markets. Shedeur, however, was a walking stock bump, a headline generator, a one-man advertising campaign. That's why Reebok was willing to double the budget once he entered the room. Not because he deserved it more, but because his family name and media machine guaranteed them a return. The climax of all this comes with Gabriel's reaction. Insiders say he was crushed. This wasn't some random pitch he lost. This was something he believed was already his. His team had been preparing for rollout dates. They thought they were weeks away from contract ink. And then the silence came, followed by Shedeur's polished, celebrity-packed announcement. Gabriel wasn't just rejected, he was erased. The deal didn't collapse publicly. It was yanked from him in private and handed to someone else. And in today's NIL-driven world, that kind of setback doesn't just sting, it can define how the rest of your career is seen. But let's zoom out, because this isn't just Dillon versus Shedeur. This is the bigger picture. What we're seeing is the future of sports branding, where merit takes a backseat to marketability and hype outweighs hard work. We're entering a world where athletes are judged less by what they do on the field and more by how they trend on social media. And that should worry every fan who still believes performance matters. Because if this trend continues, we're going to see more and more Dillon Gabriels. Players who do everything right but get passed over for someone flashier, louder, and more clickable. And this raises a massive question. What happens to brands when the hype dies down? Right now, Shedeur Sanders is the hottest story in college football. But what if Colorado tanks? What if he struggles at the pro level? What if the media circus around his family eventually fades? Reebok is betting hundreds of millions of dollars on the assumption that his stardom will hold. If it doesn't, their big comeback gamble could implode. Investors would scatter, campaigns would flop, and the very strategy that pushed Dillon Gabriel aside could leave Reebok right back in the gutter they were trying to climb out of. This deal isn't just a headline, it's a warning. It's a clear signal that the sports industry has fully shifted into entertainment-first territory, where companies don't just want players, they want personalities, they want controversies, they want social media dominance. And if you're an athlete who doesn't play that game, no matter how skilled you are, you're at risk of being ignored. So here's where I'll leave you. Was Dillon Gabriel robbed, or was this just business as usual in 2025? Was this about Shedeur Sanders truly being the better face for Reebok, or was it about nepotism, hype, and celebrity power overriding fairness? And maybe the bigger question, are we comfortable with a future where athletic deals are decided not on touchdowns, but on TikTok views? If you thought this was only about football, you're missing the bigger picture. The truth is, Shedeur Sanders lives in a completely different universe than Dillon Gabriel, and that universe is drenched in celebrity culture. When Shedeur walks into a stadium, it's not just ESPN cameras capturing him, it's rappers, influencers, and Hollywood personalities waiting to post clips. His father, Deion Coach Prime Sanders, is already a larger-than-life figure with his reality shows, commercials, and viral sideline speeches that dominate TikTok feeds. Being Deion's son isn't just a family tie, it's a full-on entertainment ecosystem. Compare that to Dillon Gabriel. He's respected, no doubt, especially among hardcore football fans. He's played in front of massive crowds, delivered clutch performances, and won admiration for his resilience. But Gabriel's world is traditional sports. Highlights on Saturdays, post-game pressers, and local media coverage. Shedeur's world, on the other hand, is pop culture crossover. He's hanging out with rappers like Offset and Rick Ross, appearing in music videos, and posting Instagram stories that get shared by fashion blogs. He's not just a quarterback. He's an influencer, a celebrity, and a marketing goldmine. Reebok knows exactly what they're buying into. This isn't the 90s anymore when sneaker companies could rely on raw athletic dominance. Today, what sells is attention, and Shedeur generates attention whether he's winning or losing. Every single thing he does becomes a headline. He posts a photo flexing a Rolex before a game. It trends. He pulls up to practice in a luxury car. It goes viral. He throws for 300 yards and talks trash on the sideline. It's clipped, captioned, and blasted across TikTok. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel could throw for 5 touchdowns and barely trend outside of Oklahoma football circles. That's not his fault. It's the reality of the modern media machine. And here's where it gets manipulative. Social media doesn't just reflect reality, it creates it. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and even YouTube Shorts thrive on personalities who spark debate, outrage, or admiration. Shedeur Sanders is tailor-made for that ecosystem. Clips of him aren't just highlights, they're memes. They're reaction content. They're stitched into thousands of fan debates online. Marketing insiders say that Reebok didn't just look at stats when choosing him, they studied his engagement metrics. Likes per post, comments per reel, TikTok stitch rate, and those numbers crushed Dillon Gabriel's. Think about it. When Shedeur dropped his Reebok signing announcement, it wasn't just a press release, it was a full pop culture event. Celebrities reposted it, blogs covered it, fan accounts argued over it. Even people who don't watch football suddenly had Shedeur Sanders on their feed. That's the power of his brand. And that's exactly what Reebok was chasing. Dillon Gabriel's signing would have been respected, sure, but Shedeur's signing took over the internet. The difference is even clearer when you look at how their images are framed online. Gabriel is shown as the hardworking, grind-focused quarterback. Respectable, but not flashy. Shedeur, he's curated as a star. The luxury cars, the designer watches, the pregame fits, all of it is intentional branding. And all of it translates into marketability. Reebok didn't just see a quarterback, they saw a walking campaign. And let's not ignore the manipulation behind this. Marketing firms working with brands like Reebok pay to boost certain athletes' visibility online. That means Shedeur's content doesn't just go viral naturally, it gets pushed, seeded, and promoted in ways that make him unavoidable. Dillon Gabriel could never compete with that machine. He wasn't built to be a pop culture spectacle, he was built to play football. And in today's twisted sponsorship landscape, that actually worked against him. The proof is everywhere. Type Shedeur Sanders into TikTok, and you'll find millions of views on clips that aren't even about his game stats. They're about his lifestyle, his interactions, his personality. Search Dillon Gabriel, and the content is mostly straight football highlights. Which one is more clickable to a casual fan scrolling at midnight? Exactly. Reebok made their choice based not on who plays better football, but on who plays the algorithm better. That's why this wasn't even a fair fight. Gabriel was outgunned the second Shedeur entered the picture. Because this wasn't just quarterback versus quarterback, it was football player versus celebrity brand. And in 2025, celebrity brands win every time. But here's the credibility hammer. Once Shedeur Sanders entered the mix, Reebok's financial strategy shifted dramatically. Reports from inside the boardroom suggest the initial budget allocation for Gabriel's deal hovered just north of $1.2 million over 2 years. Not a bad payday at all for a college quarterback still making his way in the NIL era. But the second Shedeur's name was brought to the table, that number nearly doubled. Executives were suddenly willing to push toward $2.5 million and above, and not just because of his talent. They specifically cited his crossover potential, his Amazon Prime show, his 1.5 million Instagram followers, and his ability to appear in both sports pages and gossip headlines. In short, Shedeur wasn't just an athlete. He was a brand multiplier. This is the part that burns for Gabriel. It wasn't like he didn't deserve the spotlight. By every measurable football stat, he was a worthy face for Reebok. Oklahoma had gone on runs with him at quarterback. He threw for thousands of yards, led game-winning drives, and proved his toughness. In fact, some scouts say Gabriel had a better passing consistency than Shedeur at this point in their careers. But the uncomfortable truth is, those numbers didn't matter. What mattered was that Shedeur had Deion Sanders standing behind him, a man who can call up ESPN and get a segment whenever he wants. Dillon Gabriel can't compete with that. And this isn't the first time a deal has gone sideways like this. If you study the sports marketing world, you'll notice a clear pattern. Brands aren't chasing the most deserving athletes anymore. They're chasing the loudest ones. Nike signed Bronny James before he had proven anything at the college or pro level. Why? Because he's LeBron's son and he trends globally. Adidas courted rappers like Kanye West not for their basketball skills, but for the culture they brought to sneakers. Under Armour built around Steph Curry not because he was a flashy player, at the time he wasn't, but because they bet on the underdog story and the possibility of viral growth. Reebok, however, is in a much more desperate situation. Once a titan of the sneaker world in the 80s and 90s, they've slipped to an afterthought in modern sports branding. Their basketball crown jewel, Allen Iverson, hasn't been in the league for over a decade. Their attempts to make inroads in fitness and CrossFit fizzled out. So now, in 2025, they're looking for a revival story. Signing Shedeur Sanders wasn't just about landing a quarterback, it was about attaching themselves to a cultural wave. And, by extension, riding Deion Sanders' PR hurricane. To understand why Dillon Gabriel got squeezed out, you have to see the systemic shift happening in NIL and sponsorships. This isn't just about Shedeur and Reebok, it's about how every company in the space is recalibrating toward narrative first, skill second. We're living in a sports culture where Instagram posts matter more than touchdowns, where a viral TikTok clip of Shedeur flexing a luxury watch in the locker room can generate more brand equity than Gabriel throwing for 400 yards on a Saturday. That's why, even though Gabriel played better in certain games, Shedeur stole the deal. Because one of them controlled the conversation and the other just played football. The escalation goes further when you realize this isn't isolated. Nike recently locked in long-term agreements with athletes whose professional careers are still uncertain, betting not on performance, but on family name recognition. Puma and New Balance are chasing entertainers to headline sneaker launches. Even Gatorade has started paying influencers more than actual athletes to appear in campaigns. Dillon Gabriel's case is just the latest casualty in this larger marketing arms race. What makes it sting is how sudden the pivot was. Multiple insiders confirm that Gabriel's team had already been contacted for content shoots. One even said he received emails scheduling tentative filming days in Norman. Then the communication went silent. Weeks later, Shedeur Sanders appeared in Reebok's polished PR rollout, complete with interviews, product shots, and celebrity endorsements backing him up. Gabriel and his camp weren't just left out. They were blindsided. It's one thing to lose a deal in open competition, it's another to have the rug pulled when you thought it was already yours. And here's the brutal takeaway. For Reebok, this wasn't personal, it was systemic. Gabriel represented stability. Shedeur represented chaos, clicks, and headlines. And in the modern branding economy, chaos wins every single time. Dillon Gabriel breaks down after Shedeur Sanders steals his Reebok deal. That headline alone is shocking, but it's not clickbait. This is exactly what went down. What looked like Dillon Gabriel's biggest career win outside the football field turned into a blindsiding loss, and the way it happened exposes just how brutal, political, and money-driven brand sponsorships have become. Everyone thought Gabriel was about to be the face of Reebok's football revival. He had the story, the grit, and the numbers to back it up. But then, out of nowhere, Shedeur Sanders swooped in and hijacked the spotlight. The deal shifted instantly, and Gabriel was left with nothing but frustration while Shedeur cashed in. And here's the thing, this wasn't about who deserved it. It was about who could generate hype, controversy, and money. For months, fans believed Dillon Gabriel was the frontrunner for Reebok's comeback campaign. The official story that floated around was clean and inspiring. Reebok wanted a quarterback who represented toughness and resilience, someone who could symbolize their return to the football market. Gabriel fit that perfectly. He transferred to Oklahoma, fought his way through doubters, and proved he could deliver under pressure. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't controversial, but he was reliable and consistent. On paper, it looked like a perfect marriage. Reebok would get their hardworking underdog, and Gabriel would get a brand partnership that elevated his profile. That's the myth. That's what we were all led to believe. But in reality, the decision was never truly about performance or grit. Behind closed doors, executives were weighing something entirely different: hype value. And in today's world, hype beats skill every single time. Shedeur Sanders didn't just enter the conversation, he took it over. Backed by his father Deion's media machine and armed with a viral personality that keeps him trending, whether he's winning or losing, Shedeur checked boxes Gabriel couldn't. Reebok didn't just want a quarterback. They wanted someone who could make headlines outside the field, someone who could turn sneakers into cultural moments. And Shedeur was that guy. Inside Reebok's marketing team, the shift was swift. Sources say Gabriel had already been deep in talks, with pitch decks featuring him in Reebok gear and mock-ups of campaigns showing him as the centerpiece. Negotiations had even moved into financial territory, with numbers rumored in the seven figures. Gabriel and his camp believed they were weeks away from finalizing, but then Shedeur's name got floated, and suddenly the entire room's energy changed. Reebok executives began to ask one question: why settle for Gabriel's consistency when Shedeur guarantees virality? The Sanders brand didn't just represent football, it represented clicks, YouTube views, Amazon Prime documentaries, and crossover celebrity appeal. In their eyes, Gabriel became the safe pick, and safe doesn't sell in 2025. And this is where the reveal comes in. Dillon Gabriel was never truly in control of this deal. He was part of a system designed to make athletes think it's about merit, when in reality, it's about who brings the bigger circus. The truth is, Gabriel could have thrown 50 touchdowns and broken every record, but without the Sanders name and media empire, he was always going to lose this battle. Reebok didn't just want a quarterback. They wanted the headline, "Reebok signs Shedeur Sanders." They wanted the viral rollout. They wanted to tap into the culture of controversy and hype that Shedeur lives in. And so, Gabriel's dream deal evaporated, while Shedeur walked in and collected the bag. The moment you start peeling back the layers, the receipts become undeniable. According to sources tied directly to Reebok's collegiate partnerships division, Dillon Gabriel's camp believed they were within days of closing. Meetings had already taken place where creative agencies presented draft campaigns featuring Gabriel as the face of a fall product line. In fact, insiders claim Reebok had even put together early prototypes of merchandise in Oklahoma's crimson and cream color scheme. This wasn't just talk. Gabriel was already being designed into the narrative.